Be in a calorie deficit. Be in a calorie deficit. Just be in a calorie deficit. Now, I don't know if you're as sick of hearing that advice on social media as I am, but essentially telling someone that in order to lose body fat, they need to be in a calorie deficit is, in my opinion, about as useful as telling a homeless person just to buy a house, is telling a depressed person to just cheer up, and telling an alcoholic to just stop drinking. Now, whilst that advice might help the problem, without the how, you're pretty much left stuck because you don't actually know how to do that. And in this 3-part YouTube video series, I'm gonna go through with you the 3 ways, and the 3 ways only, in which you can burn body fat, take you through the pros and the cons, and allow you to make your own decision as to which one that you're gonna pick so you can get the very best results moving into spring and summer 2025. Now, team, for those of you that are brand spanking new to my content, hello, my name is Sharif Lawton, CEO and founder of a coaching company called 23 Lean, whereby we focus, yes, on the 1 hour in which you might be in the gym or training from home, but predominantly the other 23 hours of the day, so we can focus on sleep, stress management, nutrition, how to handle the weekends, how to handle holidays, travel, work events, and all the stuff in which you're going to need for a fantastic transformation from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed for a long-lasting result. Working mainly with CEOs, entrepreneurs, business leaders, busy mums, dads, and those that have hit their 30s and their 40s, have taken a look in the mirror and gone, oh shit, I don't actually look as good as I used to. Things are starting to slip a little bit and I need to sort it out so that I can match up my physical appearance to my professional success. If that sounds like the sort of thing in which you want to be a part of and you want to learn more about, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm, and I will look forward to connecting with you either on Instagram. Just shoot me a DM. It's always me that's in there. It's not a VA or a setter or anything like that. And we can have a casual back and forth and see where things are at for you. And I can point you hopefully in the right direction with a bunch of free resources and bits and pieces to move you along your way. But without further ado, let's get into this one. I think you're gonna really like it. So let's talk about this calorie deficit thing. And by the way, if those 2 words you've never heard of before, you don't understand that, I'm gonna go ahead and prompt you to download my free fat loss formula, which you can get in the link below, completely free. It's a 19-page document taking you step by step through how to actually burn body fat, the calculations needed, and all that stuff to get you on the right track. So if you don't understand the stuff I've been hinting about and talking about so far, you're not going to understand the rest of the video. So go ahead and get that downloaded, and it's going to be absolutely eye-opening. However, if you do understand the broad principles of energy in, energy out, thermodynamics, calorie balance, that sort of stuff, burning more calories than you're consuming in order to create an energy gap so you do lose body fat, well, cool. How do we do so in a sustainable way without starving, without feeling miserable, and without feeling like we're constantly failing? And in today's video, we're going to cover the very first way we can actually look to burn body fat, and that is via caloric restriction. And it has a lot of drawbacks, I'm not going to lie, but it also has a ton of pros which most people don't consider. And the whole point of this 3-part series is to give you the education and the understanding that you can pick the right pathway for you when it comes to burning body fat. So let's dive in. So what actually is caloric restriction? And honestly, it's as simple as it sounds. It's just simply you eating the foods in which you already are right now, but just less of them, so that your body has a chance to tap into its own energy reserves for fuel and burn body fat. So just eating less than you currently are right now. And it sounds simple enough, but it can come with some serious drawbacks and some serious downfalls if you don't know what you're doing, or indeed why. And just to throw some numbers on this, let's say for instance that your maintenance calories was 2,500. And by the way, a really cool way, I've just literally inserted this into my system recently. On Instagram, if you just DM me the word macros, nothing more, nothing less, there's an AI robot which will literally calculate your exact macronutrient and calorie goals in literally about 2 seconds flat once it finds out some information from you, such as height, weight, gender, goals, all that good stuff. So if you're at all confused about that, by the way, just literally DM me on Instagram macros and it will do that for you in 2 seconds. It's such a cool tool. I wish I had something like that when I was getting into the world of nutrition and training and body recomposition. But anyway, I digress. So let's say again, for instance, that your maintenance calories, the amount of food in which you have to eat to maintain your current body weight was 2,500, for example. Well, okay, if we took 300 to 500 calories away from that and started eating 2,100 or 2,000 calories, then by the book, we would start to lose weight because we're eating under maintenance. So just that we're on the same page as a rough example. However, this approach does have some problems with it. So let's talk about the drawbacks first of all. The most obvious one, and especially if you're just eating literally the foods in which you're eating right now, but then you decide to eat less of them because you understand calorie balance, is the fact that you're going to be hungry. And hunger is the biggest killer of all diets because essentially you're relying so much on discipline and willpower. But if the majority of the day it feels like you want to chew off your own arm because you're so hungry, then it's quite simply only a matter of time before you break and binge. And we can get into some pretty negative cycles when it comes to food if we're not careful, because we just set ourselves up for a massive rebound, and you don't want that. Secondarily to that is something called metabolic adaptation, and that is when your metabolism can actually adapt to the amount of food in which you give it. And if you're constantly eating less and less and less, then what can happen over time is that your metabolism actually downgrades. If you don't know what you're doing, you're burning less calories and it adapts to the current stimulus, meaning that we get into a plateau and we get into a phase whereby it was a deficit, now no longer is, and in order to reopen that deficit, we essentially have to eat even less than we currently are or move even more. And this, again, if not managed appropriately, can just lead to you crashing, burning, or just living in that plateau and never really getting towards where you need to get to when it comes to your goals. Problem number 3 is if you're just eating the exact same foods but less of them, then essentially you're still eating a bunch of hyper palatable foods which are probably going to be low in protein, low in micronutrition, your vitamins and minerals, and indeed low in fiber, meaning that you're not going to feel full, you're not going to feel satiated, you're going to feel pretty crappy, you're going to have these energy dips, and essentially it's just going to be a no-brainer for making sure that you can't actually stick to the plan. And then lastly, it is unsustainable for most people just to go through life feeling like they're eating like a little mouse or a rabbit with teeny tiny portions of the foods in which they're already eating, compared to other people who are essentially eating what they want and bigger portions. It's not a very sustainable method if you just simply look at what you're eating right now and try and eat less. We have to do better than that, and we can do. Now, right now, I've obviously just presented the cons to caloric restriction, and it sounds like, well, why would I do this? Like, this is not a good method for anyone. However, depending on who you are, your personality type, and your background, there are some massive upsides of just pure caloric restriction if you do it right, and I'm going to go through those as well. The first one is more freedom and food flexibility. And if you consider something like myself, so back in the day, we didn't really understand the whole calories and macronutrient targets and how that's going to be the key driver when it comes to body shape change. And we were just told that, hey, here's your meal plan, eat that, and any deviation of that just simply means that you failed. Whereas now we understand that, no, if I want steak rather than chicken, if I want green beans versus broccoli, if I want white potato versus sweet potato, all that is absolutely fine, because essentially what matters at the end of the day is your macronutrient and your calorie total. So it gives you far more freedom and flexibility to actually be able to eat the foods in which you want long term, rather than just the few foods which are on this arbitrary meal plan, which you may or may not enjoy. Because again, if you just follow a meal plan, it's only a matter of time before you break and binge, or you just get bored with it. And it hasn't taught you any education about how to actually eat for life after you finish with said meal plan. And again, we can just get into these ups and downs if we don't really understand the science behind food and why we're eating certain things. So in that sense, it massively beats a strict meal plan. The second scenario in which caloric restriction might actually work quite well is if you're quite data oriented, you like the numbers, and you realize that you can actually just use an app such as MyFitnessPal, start scanning the barcodes, and it's less now about the foods which you're eating and it's more about the numbers. As long as you're not eating a highly processed, low fiber, low protein diet, this can actually work really well for certain personality types, because they're just looking at the data, the facts and the figures, and they realize they've got ultimate freedom and flexibility with their food choices, and combined with the fact that it's all about end of day numbers, then essentially it works really well for that sort of person. And then lastly, if you come from a background of restriction, no carbs, no sugar, no dairy, no bread, whatever it may be, and all of a sudden you realize, well, it's not about good and bad foods or clean and dirty foods, and in fact we shouldn't be giving emotion to foods anyway. And again, it's just more about the day-to-day numbers. How many grams of carbohydrates, proteins and fats, and indeed how many calories am I now consuming on a day-to-day basis, is going to be the single biggest factor in shifts in body weight, either up or down. Well, therefore I can include a little bit of sugar, I can include a little bit of bread, or whatever food that there is, because it's not like any one single food is inherently fattening, and ultimately no one got in shape off one chicken salad and no one got fat off one burger and chips. It's more about what we now do as a collective, as a whole on average. And in fact, the way that your body looks right now is a direct correlation to your standards, habits, routines, and exercise and food practices in which you do on a daily basis on average. And therefore, once you understand that it's not about good and bad foods, then you can have a lot of freedom and flexibility with your food choices if you indeed go down this approach. However, if you are someone who struggles with cravings or just feelings of restriction, just eating less food than you currently are probably isn't the approach for you. So what's coming in part 2? Because what if I told you that there was a way to naturally eat less without having to count calories or scan anything with a barcode, measure portions, or feel like you're starving? In the next video, we're gonna break down an approach which will automatically put you in a calorie deficit without you even opening up a tracking app such as MyFitnessPal, simply by changing the types of foods in which you eat. No counting, no tracking, just swapping foods in a way which makes fat loss almost effortless. Trust me, you will not want to miss this one. So make sure you hit subscribe, turn on those notifications, and catch me in part 2 of this mini series where I'm going to be going over this new approach that you can use if calorie restriction isn't going to be the one for you. Peace.